series, so do get your hands on a copy. Giulia has a series of freestanding articles, chapters, and papers on her name, including, just to give you a small selection, Humanity and Hyperdetermination in Sophocles' Oedipus Plays, Pandora and Robotic Technology Today, The Homeric Trojan Horse and the Paradox of Technology, and so on. And she also recently submitted a thematic volume co-edited with Maria Gerolemou on Technosôma in the classical world, forthcoming with Liverpool University Press. So do keep an eye on that as well. Another interesting fact is that her research on techne and artificial intelligence in the Odyssey will serve as the scientific content for an episode in a documentary series on Odysseus, which will be produced by the film company Kepach, to be broadcasted on the major European televisions such as RAI, ZDF, Discovery. But due to COVID, it's not clear yet when the production will start. But so very, very exciting prospects indeed. Today, Giulia will give us a presentation relating to her Odysseus Technologicus book project, exploring non-human technology and the distributed agency in Homer's epic poem. We very much look forward to it, Giulia, so the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, also from America. Especially, I would like to thank Virginia for being with us, Virginia Barros. I will now try to do the screen sharing. So just let me know before I start talking if you can visualize in a nice way the handout. I do this for the first time in my life, so I hope everything will be all right. So, application window. Yeah. Okay. So as I don't know if you perhaps had a look before on the program, I changed the title of my presentation in non-human technology and distributed agency in the Odyssey. So I will start now. In the Odyssey, non-human technology is inherently peaceful. And in this brief presentation, I take deviation as a key example, the semi-divine inhabitants of the island Scheria. As it is well known, deviations have a robotic technology at their disposal, which is unknown to the human Odysseus. In his palace, King Alkinos has metal dogs and torchbearers. And this is the handout number 1. So it's passage in Odyssey 7. And this is about the dogs. And handout number 2. This is also in Odyssey 7. Sorry, I forgot to put the number of the book. And this is the brief passage about Alkinos torchbearers. The dogs are of gold and silver, and like any device, they are created to accomplish a specific task. That is to say, to guard Alkinos' palace. Furthermore, unlike real dogs like Odysseus Argus, they are immortal and never aging. So I go back to the... they are ante litteram the first Aibo. The golden torchbearers are androids. They are boys made of gold, AI robots similar to young boys built to light up Alkinos' palace. But perhaps the most famous robotic technology of the Phaeacians are their ships. Poseidon, to whom the Phaeacians are particularly devout, offers them ships to behave like intelligent devices. Thus, the ships are said to sail the sea, aiming for the root with their mind, and the comparison of their sweetness to thought point to their cognitive abilities. And this is the handout number 3. The sec. Yeah. This is, you see in Odyssey 7, you see the metaphor, the numeric simile, which I put on bold, and the ships are sweet as a bird on the wing or as a thought. And then there is the famous passage in Odyssey 8, in which the ships are said to travel with their minds, which is basically the second line in the passage, discerning the curse by their wits. Especially on the Homeric semi, in Odyssey 7, I would like to quote two passages from one from Marianne Oppmann's book on the Odyssey, published in 2012, and one from Geneviève Lively and Sam Thomas in a paper which has been published this year. The bibliography is by the last slide of the handout, so I cannot show you now. Oppmann remarks, the knowledge and understanding that normally characterize pilots are transferred to the ships themselves. And Geneviève note, quotes, we are first introduced to these imaginary autonomous vehicles in Homer Odyssey with an abscimile that soon proved to be much more than metaphoric. The Phaeacian ships are swift as a bird on the wing or as a thought, like the human mind knows, which is also perceived to fly as swiftly as a bird in ancient Greek models. These ships unambiguously possess a natural kind of artificial intelligence. In this respect, Detienne and Vernon, in a book published 1974, makes a very interesting remark. Since the Phaeacians have Poseidon's Mars ships at their disposal and therefore do not need Metis, cunning to say, they also do not worship Athena. The specific technology of smart ships excluded Metis, understood here as the sailing skills. In fact, the Phaeacians are never said to be men of Metis, contrary to Odysseus. Talking about the Phaeacian ships, Alcinous dogs, and the Torchbearers as robotic devices, I differ from some recent contributions, notably from Berryman. It is not plausible to assume that Homer had robots in mind. Those artifacts are solely the product of divine intervention without artificial components. Yet, as the group has similarly observed, the motion of these machines could be responding to actual technological knowledge which was available in the Homeric world, propulsion by steam or hot air, or alternatively, mechanical movement induced by a thread and a cable's contraction. It is also worth considering the case of a mythical thinking anticipating future mechanical invention of social reality. As has been the case with Leonardo's airplane prototypes, the cyborg in Edgar Allan Poe novel The Man That Was Used Up, published in 1839, and in the same context, and in the very context of social sciences, May's prophetic book, The Origin of Feedback Control. And of course, many other examples would make the list. The Phaeacian ships are not only an instantiation of robotic technology. By close reading, the motion of the Phaeacian ships blur the dividing line between technology and magic. They are said to be self-propelled and completely self-driving. They cut through the sea waves without pilots or oars, and yet they are not said to be equipped with automatic engines that activate them. And this is again the passage in Odyssey 8, which I try to visualize again here. So you see, the Phaeacians have no pilots, not steering oars, but they know by themselves the thought and minds of men. More than that, Poseidon ships build an intelligent system in which the automated devices act as proxies of human pilots. Unlike Hephaestus' golden maidens and bellows, they, which obey to the order of their programmer, they find their ways in the sea without following the orders of Poseidon or of a elf man or of elf man. And I put you the passages about Hephaestus called the maids and bellows in the handout number 5. So here you see the maidens, which are called amphipoloi, so servant of an anax, so servant of a lord. And you see the maidens do whatever they know because the information comes from divine knowledge. They know cunning handiwork by gift of the immortal gods, not by themselves. And then again, Hephaestus, a called lord in the last line. And if you have a look at the bellows, it is quite clear. They follow the orders of the god. This is the line number 2. I put it in bold as well. Bade them work. And in the end, it is all about what Hephaestus wants, the last line, Hephaestus et Seloi, and in the last before the last line, the Greek speudonti paremai means the maidens are meant to be of help, an help for the god, as elabot art. Poseidon ships then can be conceived as autonomous devices, which do not accomplish a set of program or command and task, but act indeed according to their own decision. Homer seems to anticipate Edwin Archin's idea of navigation in Cognition in the Wild, according to which navigation takes place through a system made out of the people, tools, and environment on and around the ship, a distributed cognitive network. Yet, this first agency in Homer is not necessarily associated with artificial cognition. Thus, the Phaeacian ships display autonomous capacity of volition like Odysseus ships, so like human ships. In the Cyclopeia, so in Odyssey 9, the hero ships refuse to pass on until the crew recalls thrice the name of the companion killed by the Cyclones. Furthermore, when Odysseus stressed out that the Cyclops do not have ships at their disposal, he also explicitly attributes to the ships the capacity to accomplish each and every task necessary to sail the sea and to land on cities. And I put you the passages, these two passages from Odyssey 9 in the handout number 6. So the first one is about the Cyclones, and the second one is about the Cyclops. And yet, although the humans and the Phaeacian ships are both represented as being able of volition, the divine technology of seafaring, interestingly enough, profoundly differs from the human. Human ships have pilots and wheels to make them move through the sea. The helmet, in fact, is an essential part of the human ship. For example, when Phrontis dies, Menelaus has trouble sailing. This is a very long passage in Book 3, which I didn't put in the handout. This is passage 277 to 300 in Book 3. And the same is true for Odysseus, who instructs the helmsman on how to sail and tells him that the crew life is in his hands. And this is a passage, again, a very long passage, 100 lines, so I haven't put it in handout. This is passage 217 to 221 in Book 12. Poseidon intelligent ships appear in a context of peace. For the Phaeacian, a society at peace, devoted to dance, music, and banquet, and accustomed to war and strife, technology leaves no room for violence. As Nausicaa explains to Odysseus, for the Phaeacian, ships in fact substitute arrows and quiver. And this is a passage in Odyssey 6, which is in the handout number 7. So you see, for the Phaeacian care not for bow and quiver, but for mast and oars of ships, and for their shapely ships, rejoicing which they cross over the great sea. As war depends on weapons, peace depends on intelligence devices and characterizes a utopian society whose members are close to the gods. In contrast to the semi-divine Phaeacians, for the human being Odysseus, the hero of the Trojan horse and of the blinding of Polyphemus, to exist is to be a cultural being whose life is bound to violence. And indeed, as in the case of his encounter with the Cyprus Polyphemus, who lives in peace with his animal and only becomes a man-eater when he encounters Odysseus, also in the case of his encounter with the Phaeacians, the hero acts as the destroyer of a utopian life. Odysseus reciprocates the Phaeacian gifts of Xenia, of guest friendship, with death. Notably, Poseidon will wipe out Scheria in a fit of rage against the Phaeacians, who has given a ship to Odysseus to travel back home. We see that the we see that the self-driven ship which the Phaeacian grants to the hero as a gift for his homecoming is inserted in the so-called economy of exchange, which, however, is not reciprocated in the episode of the Odyssey. The gift the Phaeacian will receive back is their own destruction. If the divine smart technology of the Phaeacian is associated with violence, this is ultimately only because of the human Odysseus. Besides being the robotic instantiation of a completely peaceful and divine technology, the Phaeacian self-propelled and completely self-driving ships are also a case for the philanthropic implementation of smart technology. Thus, the Phaeacian, as I already said, gives Odysseus one of their ships to help him to continue his journey back home and to reunite with his family and the people of Ithaca. Smart technology here is driven towards a goal which has an eminently social value: bring real people together, not their avatars, and this obviously finally after 20 years. Odyssean smart technology does not promote social distancing, but rather social closeness. Thus, if Odysseus can exist as Odysseus, and I mean here Odysseus, the name is in bracket, that is to say, as the husband of Penelope, the father of Telemachus, the son of Laertes, and the king of Ithaca, this is only because his identity is rooted in the story of his life within a community of people. The life of Odysseus, the first man driving on a smart device, is ultimately a shared and intimate life with close people. In this light, the literary figure of the Phaeacian smart ships seems to provide us the relevant epistemological frame, perhaps, to investigate what degree of control we maintain today upon new technologies. If, at least for now, devices such as the smartphones are essential in implementing social distancing, we might also ask if you do not turn us away from the human world, and therefore whether they do not diminish our philanthropia. At least in Homeric terms, it seems that the human subject is on its boiling point, as Bataille once said. By inventing ships, we also invented shipwrecks. By enhancing the intelligence of machine, we lessen our own. Obviously, for instance, the increased digital analphabetism. By inventing smartphones to facilitate social mobility and contact, we also invented technological produced self-isolation. There is always an excess of energy, as I've written elsewhere, and of course share to be spent in some way, to pursue, to get rid of, to atone for. In other words, the more technology develops, this is what I would like to suggest, the more there is a strange need to disperse at least a portion of our humanity, which so often appears excessive and makes us guilty. The more technology develops, the more it seems to unfold a couple di soldi among us, a desire to join some universal, abstract scheme, larger and mightier than ourselves, even at the cost of dissolving ourselves in it. And I'm done.
All right, thank you very much for this very thought-provoking paper. It's quite interesting to see how you link this ancient material with these very, very contemporary concerns, this situation that we all find ourselves in, right? This social distancing and the philanthropic value of technology. So I can imagine our participants will have some questions, some comments perhaps, and I would suggest that if you have them, if you could raise your hand or drop a line in the chat. I have a look through the participant list. Well, we can let people think a little bit.
I will make a break, a couple of minutes.
Yeah, you're the boss. You can choose. So I was wondering, like, you draw the link with smartphones, and I was also wondering, like, I mean, we have these self-driving cars these days as well. Perhaps that's also a useful parallel case for these artificially intelligent ships, or like autopilot functions in airplanes, right? I mean, they also connect people in some way. Just as a contrastive case to the smartphone example that you gave.
Yeah. I mean, yes, for sure. But I mean, they are not implemented yet, so I wouldn't know what to say about them. Whereas smartphones are implemented since very long.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I was also wondering, like, these ships, like how I don't know how to put it, how cognitively independent are they really? Now, I haven't checked the Homeric text closely, but I was wondering, I mean, do they really think by themselves, or are they rather subject to, like, the wishes of the people who fare on those ships, who take those ships, right? I don't know what is the message that Homer is trying to convey through his text.
Perhaps I can go back to the handout. I don't know how. Wait a sec. I don't know how to go back to the handout. But perhaps I can just send it in the chat. So, I mean, the passage in Odyssey 8, it seems quite clear to me. This is the passage 555 to 561, in the sense that they say it autonomously. It is explicitly said in the text, in Greek, autai isasi. They know by themselves what the humans want.
Yeah.
So they don't have to wait for orders to the human, go there and there. They just can read the minds and move accordingly.
Right.
And I think the volition is really underlined in the Greek autai. They know.
Yeah, that's probably the distributive aspect of it, like it's some kind of a collaboration between the will of the people, let's say, and
the human obviously have an aim. They want to go from X to Y.
Yeah.
But the ships are able to do by themselves this movement.
Right.
And this is obviously the distributed cognition. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
We have a human mind and human desire and human volition, and then we have robots able to act by themselves accordingly.
Yeah.
But then obviously also when it is said explicitly than before, still in the same passage, they don't move because they have steering roles or helpmen. They really move by themselves.
That's the automata robot, wasn't it? Yeah. Right.
Well, by the helpman is obviously Kubernetes, and the steering oar are the pedalia.
Right. I see that Sara Chiarini has a question. So please do ask.
Hi. Thank you, Giulia Maria. Thank you very much for this paper. I was mainly struck by, you talked about two main kinds of artifacts, of autonomous artifacts, those which are basically created by gods, and those technical tools created by humans, and I think this is a kind of key distinction that one has to make when talking about these this automata, since in my opinion, do you think really that that human-made or human-conceived automata did possess the same kind of feature, the same kind of properties that those extraordinary, those the maidens or the dogs, that were created by Hephaestus, for instance, possessed. I would kind of draw a line between those two types of artifacts. Wouldn't you kind of distinguish between man-made and God-made, divinely produced artifacts, automatic or autonomous artifacts, and if so, because this is a point which plays also a big role in ancient magic, and the perception and the belief that certain objects, for instance, have an intention, an activity on their own, a kind of psyche within them, and I think it is also there very, very, very relevant to distinguish whether this psyche, whether this inner intelligence, let's call it, could be, came from the gods, from the divine world, or from the practitioners of those rituals, for instance. So again, whether you would, I'm interested in your opinion about this kind of categorization.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I mean, it depends on what devices. If there is definitely I would say based on the text, obviously, really a dichotomy between divine and with non-human, I mean, also not only, but also divine technology and human technology in the Odyssey. So if you take bellows, only Hephaestus' bellows move by themselves. We don't have any other instances of human-made devices which can move by themselves. But if you look at the ships, no, I don't think there is any difference. Okay. The Phaeacian ships as volition, as much as human ships as volition. There are several passages in the Odyssey. I only quoted these two. I mean, the one from the Cyclopeia. I mean, when in the passage on the Cyclones, it's clearly said, I mean, really in the Greek, that the ships don't pass on until humans do something. So the ships, they have evolution in the sense that they put conditions on the possibility of travel further or not. If the humans do not call thrice the name of the people who died, they will not pass on. And this is a clear instance, obviously, of volition, which is independently from what human wants. Mm-hmm. But also in the case of again in passage 9 of the Odyssey, when we go from the Cyclones to the Cyclops. So this says, yes, you do not have any ships. And then it says, that human ships perform all their tasks. The Greek is ai teleioin ekasta. The ships perform their tasks. So obviously, okay, perhaps here it's a bit more fuzzy than the first example, when really the ships put a condition to the further traveling. But still, at least from this half of the hexameter, we can convey that ships have wants. And this is again not said if these wants are human determined or not. The Greek just says ai teloien ekasta, which should perform all their wants. Ships who should perform all their wants. And when do performs all their want? Passing to the city of other folks. Astea ikneumenai epi anthropon.
All right, I see we have some. Yes, sorry for interrupting. I see we have some more people who wanted to raise some questions. Next in line is Serafina Cuomo.
Thank you. That was fascinating, as I said. I just happened to have read Cognition in the Wild quite recently, and the example of the ship. I think it's an extraordinary parallel. And one of the things I was thinking is that, in fact, the ship that moves pretty much by itself is an example of cognition where the distribution is much narrower, because it would only be basically between the mind and the ship. So what is being lost here is really the social organization of the crew navigating the ship. So to kind of transfer the example that Hutchins uses to Odysseus and his crew on a normal ship, you'd have, Odysseus and all his men and the ship, and that's like, the navigation distributed across the ship and the men. And what is really missing there is the crew. And I think that's very important, both from the point of view of Odysseus's actual story there. He's going back, but he's going back on his own. So it makes a lot of sense that the ship is navigating itself, because that distribution of cognition has now been incredibly narrowed down, but also totally then confirms what you were saying. It's at the end, it's a very good example in this case where this kind of technology, and we can leave on the side for the moment the question of whether the ship has a mind, in the same way that we can, kind of isolate, fence off the question of whether computers have a mind, but he is on his own. So it's like, yeah, that kind of technology has definitely really narrowed his social experience as well. The social experience, which is such an important part of distributed cognition in Hutchins's book. So yeah, I mean, more than a question, it was a kind of a comment, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much, Serafina. I really wasn't thinking about it. Really, I didn't. So I'm very, very grateful for that. Yeah, you are. Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, the fact that it is alone, which is obviously not the case in Hutchinson's book, there are ships with humans. There is a sociality there. And the fact that it is alone, without crew, perhaps, as you said, underlines even more that sociality takes place in the Odyssey only when there is not basically smart technology. So it's Vita Social when it's in Ithaca, and obviously in Ithaca it will have normal human ships, not anymore the Phaeacian one. Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right, and then there was also Thanos Tsingos who had a question.
Yes. First of all, thank you for the amazing vortrag presentation. Now, my question is, how would you explain the fact that God's creations, such as Hephaestus' bellows, have a mind, but it's not of their own? They're clearly directed to follow orders and do the God's bidding, whereas the ships of the Phaeacians, they clearly have a volition of their own, thus free will. Yeah. So how do you? I don't know. How would you explain this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Of course. Now, the God's creations have a mind, but it's not of their own. They're used as subservient beings.
Yeah.
Whereas the ships of the Phaeacians have a mind of their own. How would you explain this? Those behaviors of those inanimate objects?
Yeah, this goes perhaps a bit back to Sarah's question. I mean, again, also there are the spectrum of the variety of human and divine instances of technology in the Odyssey one can say is quite big. In which sense is quite big? In the sense that sometimes we see a dichotomy between divine, so non-human, and between a human technology. Sometimes we see point in, sometimes they are entangled, like, for example, as I said, like in the case of the ships. But sometimes, if you only look at divine smart technology, then you see differences. For example, difference in volition. You have artifices which are divine because these ships come from Poseidon. And sometimes you have devices which also come from a god, like the Bellows and the Handmaidens, who don't. So why? I would just answer the question in saying, but perhaps, I don't know, perhaps I'm wrong. I would just answer the question and say God can create whatever he wants. But in this, then again, divine technology is very similar to the human one. In the Odyssey, also humans build the kind of technology they want. When Odysseus need a raft, to build a raft. When he need a bat, to build a bat. When he need a ship, and when he need an arrow, he use an arrow. Whatever he wants and needs. So the wanting is obviously related to what one needs as well, regardless whether it is human or divine technology. There is a question by Annabelle in the chat. Perhaps we can go to this question.
Yes. Shall I read it out loud, or?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So Annabelle asks, is there any consideration about the potential moral implications of autonomous artificial intelligence in the Odyssey? Kind of like in iRobot, are these same anxieties present in the imagined artificial intelligences of Antiquity? So that brings us to like the ethics around AI and related fears about those devices. Is there any of that material or that evidence in Homer or elsewhere?
I mean, anxieties related to smart technology, I would say no, but perhaps other people in this lecture might say differently and perhaps say something more. I would say no, there is no anxiety related to smart technology. Quite the contrary, smart technology really belongs to an utopian world, which gets then destroyed by the human, by the hero. So people who have this, meaning deviations, are very happy people. I mean, they live in peace. They have their island. They do whatever they want. They dance. There is no anxieties, I would say, but there is a huge anxieties. And in my book on the Odyssey, I'm trying to write on this, on human technology, and the anxieties come from what do I do with that? What happens if through technology I get violent? It's not that, this is what I meant, that human technology is bound to violence. It's not that it has to become violent, human implementation of technological devices, but it often does. And when it does, then everything gets very wrong, like in the case of the suitors, for instance, but also like in the case of the encounters with the Cyclops Polyphemus.
I do wonder, like, how does a mythological figure like Pandora fit in this story, right? She's some kind of a fembot, kind of, like also created by gods, but she does bring quite some anxieties to humankind, right? But perhaps, well, and she's also artificially intelligent, like in Theognis. In Hesiod, you read that she has the intelligence and the whatnot, but I don't know if that fits as a counterexample, perhaps, of your argument. I don't know.
I would like to answer the question, but I see that Maria has a question.
Yeah, of course. Yes, Maria.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Giulia. I was
Hey, hi, Maria.
I like the reference to the Torchbearers in Alkino's palace. Light is always an animating source. It's very interesting. In the seventh book, if I remember correctly, we have the word Daidas. Obviously, the text talks about torches. There's a very interesting passage, verse in book 19, where we have a reference to a lichnos, to a lamp. This is the famous golden lamp of Athena. It's the term lichnos and apax in Homer. We don't know why. Some scholars say that it might be an interpolation. The interesting in this with this lichnos is the reaction of Telemachus to the lichnos. He actually says he uses the term tauma, that is usually in relation to technologies, also in Homer, also with the golden maidens. And he says, Telemachus says, oh, it's such a great miracle. I actually can't see with my bare eyes. And it's as if a god is living in this lamp. I think this is a very interesting passage, and I was wondering if it stands in contrast to what you have said about the Torchbearers, or it actually supplements what is said in book 7 and what's happening in the Alkino's palace.
Thank you, Maria. This is so nice. You are, if I remember correctly, this lamp, which Telemachus said is a kind of tauma, is the lamp that his mother, Penelope, uses to be able to web Laertes' shroud. So it sees this light basically coming up from Penelope room.
No, this is Athena has the lamp. It's Athena's lamp.
Yeah, but the lamp is used for Penelope to be able to wave in the night.
Okay, I don't remember that. Okay.
I think so. But yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I would say, and thank you so much for bringing this together, because again, I would never thought about it really. You're right. I mean, it's interesting that it says he marvels at it. It said it's a tauma. Yeah. As if, and the fact that we are in a realm of technological wonder, which is then related to Athena, one could really think if there is a direct correspondence between the Torchbearers in Alkino's palace, because in the end Odysseus will marvel at it. The word tauma comes up also at the end of the description of all these devices in Alkino's palace. So we have a direct, first a linguistical direct connection again with the tauma. Odysseus was marveling and all this stuff, I mean the dogs and the Torchbearers. But also again the fact that the lamp is divine. It's again a direct connection between the Phaeacian, who are semi-divine, and between Athena. So we are again in the god realm, in the divine realm. Yeah, I would say yes, actually.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions, comments? I'll go through the chats, through the participant lists. Perhaps just one question, like, so these theologically created devices, these divine technologies, they are kind of like the gods themselves, right? I mean, they are eternally living, they're immortal, stuff like that. But I also wonder, I mean, your premise is that they are inherently peaceful, but thinking of the gods themselves, they are also inherently peaceful, but they are potentially aggressive. I mean, they do participate in war, right? The Iliad is the best example. So I was wondering, like, keeping in mind these guardian dogs as an example, right? So they are also potentially aggressive. It's when you provoke them that they will, that they are, well, purposed to be aggressive, actually, right? So I was wondering, like, that link between, yeah, if that makes sense, generally speaking, that they are peaceful in actuality, let's say, but potentially aggressive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I would say, I mean, they have to guard the palace. So basically the idea is to guard off intruders, thieves, whatever. And in that sense, the dogs are also meant then, yes, of course, to be aggressive, to do the job, guard off the enemy, so to say.
Yeah.
But the Phaeacian doesn't know war. Nausicaa is very clear on that. And why they don't know war? Because the ships substitute quiver and arrows. I mean, they are a peaceful society. There is basically, based on the text, no doubt on that. But yeah, I mean, it's still a peaceful society, meaning a society which doesn't know war, but still a society who can have thieves and intruders and so on.
Right. Yeah.
So the palace has to be defended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if we have no further questions, I think we may have reached a natural conclusion, perhaps, of this talk. And perhaps it's a good idea to say what else is up in the lecture series. Unless I've missed one.
No, this is just a thank you.
Okay.
I don't remember what is in what the next speech, the next talk would be about.
The next talk is by Sarah Chiarini, who's
Exactly,
here with
Sarah,
us,
yeah.
right? On January 11th.
Yeah.
At the same time, 6 p.m.
At the same time, so it's 6 p.m. Yeah.
Yeah. So we hope to see you here then.
Okay, then thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
And perhaps see you again.
And thanks, Giulia, for a very nice paper. Very much enjoyed it. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Giulia. Thank you, everybody.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.